Hello everyone, and welcome to part 5 of my Grail series. We begin with Lord Melchizedek initiates the generational Grail blood path. Now I'm going to switch over for a moment to this page on my Spirit Mythos website to show you these little images because I don't know where the large ones are right now. And these are images I created many years ago. And I'm just going to read this and you can kind of follow along with the images. According to Thoth, the name Melchizedek can be used to refer to two different entities. The first being the greater universal Melchizedekian archetype as a composite being beyond the vibration of what we understand as a soul. Secondly, the Lord Melchizedek, who was an ensouled yet illumined entity. The latter is the being Thoth claims as one of his previous incarnations, and will be the one we refer to herein. When the Lord Melchizedek came from Orion through the portal of Venus to ancient Lemuria, he brought the Archangel Crystal, also known archetypally as the Philosopher's Stone, with him to Earth. It contained the vibrational imprint or template of higher wisdom concerning the Christ consciousness and its destined patterning in this planetary sphere. This crystal was housed in the Melchizedek Temple of Lemuria within a circlet of gold fashioned with solar rays extending outwards from the setting. The crystal in its sun circle was positioned atop a goblet stem set with gemstones and sacred inscriptions. Through the eons, the etheric level of the planet fell, forcing the Archangel Crystal to be taken up from this dimension. In medieval alchemy, the Philosopher's Stone was seen to be a magical formula for turning lesser metals into gold. Spiritually, it was also perceived as that elusive portion of God's self, which when discovered and utilized, will transform the human condition from its fallen state. Thoth reveals to us that this concept was originally derived from the lesser version of the Archangel Crystal. This lesser version of the crystal was set upon a staff attached to the first Ark of the Covenant. Thoth refers to this first Ark as the Ark of Grace. There was a second Ark that was created by Moses and his priests after the debacle with the golden calf, when the first Ark was withdrawn from the people of the Exodus. When the second Ark was constructed, the staff with the crystal was then attached to it. However, this had occurred against Moses' command, and the second Ark destroyed the staff. The crystal was unharmed, and centuries later came to be in the possession of Guinevere, King Arthur's queen. The crystal is currently kept in a small cup inside an ankh-shaped box, and now rests in the chapel on the Avalonic Star Isle of Iovia, on the other side of the etheric veil. It is also beneath the crystal sarcophagus of Torhana in her etheric vault inside the Tor. Thus, the Archangel Crystal is bilocated in the etheric in order to serve more than one function within its greater purpose. Remember, we're dealing here with quantum physics, and that's what the story is really all about. The Swastika Symbol is sacred to many races, including the Hopis and the Tibetans, and became the infamous symbol of the Nazi Party, who reversed its outer arms in an act of reversing the Christic current. This sacred symbol, in its correct form, is a variation of the original Lemurian Melchizedekian symbol for the Archangel Crystal set in its sun circlet. This same crystal is always sought by the incarnate Antichrist of the age, Hitler being the last empowered Antichrist thus far on the earth. Thoth stresses the word empowered because there have been several attempts to empower someone with this, and so far that has not succeeded. Returning to the thrust of Lord Melchizedek's role in the initiation of the Grail blood path on the earth, Lord Melchizedek made 2 appearances in the earthen experience, the first being in the Hyperborean epoch, the second being in the period of Eros, in the very early Lemuria, right after the fall. In the second of these appearances on the earth, it is the second with which we are concerned in this article. It was at that time that he established the first Melchizedekian temples in order to anchor and perpetuate the consciousness of the Order of Melchizedek. This order is an interplanes group dedicated to the perpetuation of the greater archetypal Melchizedekian consciousness designed in all worlds of form. There is much that could be said in regards to these early Melchizedekian temples, but in keeping with our main storyline, we will simply relate that they served as the birthing grounds for the first Grail blood lineages to be founded in the earth. The Lord Melchizedek held the living vibration of Christic consciousness within his blood. Thus was one of the major components of Melchizedek's intended earthen mission was to create generational Grail blood lineages in this planet's genetic streaming, thereby infusing lost light codes into the genetics of mankind. In a later age, Yeshua, the host for the Christ incarnate, would spring from the vine of Melchizedek to revivify these codes and take them into a new octave of experience. It was the direct result of this greater divine plan that the pure Solarian genetics of the Lord Melchizedek were inseminated into 12 carefully selected and prepared female initiates, who then each birthed a child as a result. We must keep in mind that even though the fall had already occurred, the consciousness of those souls embodied on the earth at that time were still operating at a higher level, a high enough spectrum of vibration to keep such an act of perpetuation in the context of its sacred and divine purpose. This was especially so for those women who were chosen and carefully prepared for this role, as they were high initiates of the Lord Melchizedek himself. And so, let us review this for a moment. These 12 selected women were all impregnated by the Lord Melchizedek for this particular purpose. You know, we look at these things sometimes in our conventional thinking and think, oh my goodness, or is this some kind of genetic engineering? Also, because we have this whole Anunnaki thing that came much later that we're looking at. But understand that what was going on here was not of any base nature, nor was it any kind of fallen genetic engineering. We could say it was a form of genetic engineering, but all with the highest consent and good of the planetary spectrum and the priestesses involved. There was no, subliminal control or slavery or anything like that going on. This was of the highest order. What took place with the Anunnaki and all of that was a corruption of the original intent. The souls of these first 12 children, who were born as a result of this sacred creational process, were also chosen by the spiritual hierarchy to ensure the success of the first generation of Melchizedek. These original 12 lineages were perpetuated through the Lemurian experience until its latter days as a nation. However, while it was in ancient Lemuria that the Christic Grail was originally seeded by Melchizedek, the true format of a Grail mystery was not actually created until ages later in Atlantis. From the record of Thoth, the following outline is revealed. During the cataclysmic destruction of Lemuria, which occurred over a long period of time, the remaining descendants of the Lord Melchizedek migrated to Atlantis, When Lemuria began to falter as both a nation and a landmass, the few remaining generations of Melchizedek came to Atlantis with the purpose of creating and perpetuating the Grail mystery for the future of mankind. These Melchizedekian descendants were the first Grail families. Once they re-established themselves in Atlantis, these Grail-born designated a Grail priest-king or priest-queen for each of the 12 Melchizedekian family branches. Each of these 12 kings-queens established temple communities in Atlantis for their family tribe. In the perception of that age, this was not seen as an act of elitism, but as a means to preserve genetic consciousness which could be accessed through these family tribes for the good of all the world. Now, I wish to state that when we're using the words queen and king, Thoth is using them symbolically. Many of the words he's using here are symbolic. Melchizedek, Grail, kings, queens, because he's showing how this incorporated stream and how it developed to become what we look to as the Grail mystery, and the fictional Grail stories, and the actual physical author and Guinevere, and the fact that they did come out of this streaming. So that's why he's using this format, this symbolic format interpretation. So these weren't kings and queens as we understand them now. Between the arrival of the first Grail family tribes from Lemuria and the final demise of Atlantis was, of course, a period of many tens of thousands of years. Consequently, there were many Grail-born who assumed a seat in one of the 12 positions during that length of time. Now, before I continue again, I want to say that when we're talking of tens of thousands of years, we're thinking, oh my God, that's such a long, long time. But you see, awareness, consciousness was different then. Aging was different then. So it wasn't such a long time for them. But if we were to count it sequentially in our linear understanding, it would be a very long time for us. It was an age in which human beings, especially sunborn, had lifespans of many hundreds up to even 2,000 years. All sunborn have a certain amount of ultra-terrestrial genetic lineage, as did the Grail lineages through Lord Melchizedek. Well, again, an aside, we all have ultra-terrestrial genetics of some kind or another, but he's speaking of a particular amount that qualifies to say it's a true ultra-terrestrial lineage. Sunborn came from the bloodline lineage of the most ancient star races that came to Earth in several migrations beginning in the Hyperborean epoch. The Grailborn came out of the Sunborn of the Melchizedek lineage begun in the Eros epoch. Now he's referring here to epochs that I have written about and are on the Spirit Mythos. And if you Googled, or you could go to my Spirit Mythos website and type in Hyperborean epoch or Eros epoch, that would come up. The following are the first 12 Grail priest kings, priestess queens of Atlantis. All other Grail kings, queens are on the planet after that time descended from their generation. Boy, did I read that badly. Again, for those of you who have not heard it for the millionth time, I have difficulty seeing because I don't have any glasses, and I'm trying to read out of my old texts. And it's old books and the print's kind of scruffy. So I apologize. I will do the best I can. I'm going to read that sentence again. The following are the first 12 Grail priest kings, priestess queens of Atlantis. All other Grail kings, queens on the planet after that time descended from their generation. Now, I'm going to attempt to pronounce the names he gave me of the 12. It's not really that important to us right now to even know the names, but I'm just going to give it a try, okay? Arian, a king. Then a queen was Meshova, a king Alabast, a king Pentagron, a queen Helikal. No, that's king. Sorry, Helikal. A queen Imogron, a king Kaval, a queen Lin Jinradara, a king Topaz. Wow, okay, that was easy. A queen Hatsoma, a king Brendar, and a king Anubal. In addition to their individual temple communities, the Grail kings queens established a central gathering place where the 12 would come together for decision-making crucial to the perpetuation of their family tribes, and also to enter high states of synergic awareness in order to aid in the respiritualization of the planet. All of Atlantis held the Grail priest kings, queens, and their family tribes in high esteem. These were not kings and queens who attempted to actually govern the people of Atlantis. They were given this title, or we're giving that title in place of whatever Lemurian or Atlantean word was used, to acknowledge them as persons who carried the royal blood of heaven for all of Earth's kind in their evolutionary source to return. Return to source. They were men and women who lived their lives in service to God through humanity. Thus they came together reverently to assist the world condition in its return to source. The service of these priest kings and priest queens was more than a homage of faith. They were capable of traveling through the inner world portals and communing with illumined beings of other stars and dimensions. Their purpose was that of spiritual magicians who used their superior powers selflessly to promote the Christic presence in the world. Again, another commentary on this. Can you imagine in this day and age trying to do something like that? If somebody set up an order like that, we'd be all over them. We'd say, oh my God, look what's happening here. Because we know it would become corrupted if it already wasn't, and it would be elitism. Well, think about it a minute. Don't we already have that? The 1%, the establishment, not only in the United States, but all over the world. That's what Thoth calls the anti-Grail family. And, it's true also. I don't follow everything David Icke says. I really have hardly even seen any of his videos or read any of his material, but the little bit that I have, it depends, okay? Some of it I really agree with, and other parts of it I just don't agree with at all. I believe he's a very sincere person, so, I'm not knocking that. And who can say why I don't or do agree with something or what he's saying? It's like we have all these alternate realities, and we also have all our lenses that we see things through the way we see them, so I'm not saying anything but that. However, I make that statement because I'm about to say that I do agree with David Icke that there are lineages that are perpetuating themselves in a lesser than positive way. And all of the 1% that we're talking about, let's just use that term. It's hard to use what term, but those way up there at the top there are related. They're related on some level or another. And Icke says this, other people say this, and some people offer proof. I don't know if it's real proof or not, but I'm saying that yes, that's true. But they're all part of the anti-Grail family. This is, again, Thoth's symbolic term to allow us to understand this. So we can look at it as two streams on the planet that were sent here to guide us and guard us and help us genetically move to our higher awareness. One is the Grail family, quote unquote, and the other is the anti-Grail family. Now, probably everybody on the planet has some relationship to both in their genetics and in their paragenetics, which doesn't make us one way or the other. It's just, we're on Earth, and we have a real mixed bag of genetics going on here. So we can be influenced by both family types. Some of us can be influenced more by one than another, depending on how much anti-Grail or Grail genetic energy is in there. But this is not racial profiling. Believe me, it is not. Or genetic profiling, because we have the paragenetics as well. And I've spoken about that a lot, which is something beyond the linear genetic realm. And this is something that can change our genetic profile in the flash of an eye. So nobody's stuck with the genetic profiling. Nobody. And we have the power to do that. each of us. So that's a whole nother topic. But when I get into this and I'm talking about, one person might have more anti-Grail and the other might have more Grail, I don't want to get, it's a sensitive area because you can go off on thinking, oh, okay, we've got to label these people over here because they're not thinking as I do, so they're anti-Grail. We have to be careful about that because that is disqualifying the true understanding of what this is all about. And every human being has a right to their genetic highest potential and awareness. It's in them. I don't care who they are. But they're choices. And souls make choices. And they make choices in incarnational formats, as well as outside of them. So, when we look at this establishment of what they did here in Atlantis, that was totally in a spiritual vein, it was beautiful, it was right, it was good. But we can also flip this and look at it from an anti-Grail perspective in the modern time. And what do we see? That's all I'm saying. Just saying, folks. Okay, to continue. The gathering place of the Grail Kings, Queens was a rather simple circular building called the Sarhanok. I'm going to spell that. S-A-R, and then the next word is H-A-N-O-K, meaning the Dragon Star. It was named thus because Melchizedek was known as the Dragon Star, the one who came upon a fiery breath of the dragon to earth. This was the ancient description of the brilliant Merkaba that descended to earth, transporting the being Melchizedek from Venus to this realm, a story which was still remembered and told after all those ages had passed. The inside of the Sarhanok was composed of two concentric circles, the first being a narrow hall width around, the first being a narrow hall width around the circumference of the second. This outer circle was called the Hall of Generation, within which was inscribed the history of the Melchizedekian generations. There were also niches in this hallway, provided for talismans and other objects of sacred significance to the Grail families. Positioned in the center of the larger inner circle was the Mobad, or crystal round. This was a large dodecanal, 12-faced table made of pure quartz crystal. Inside the crystal were thin wisps of plant form known as Imicea, I-M-C-E-A. This plant was one of the ancient survivors of another era when plant life was more highly developed and sensitive to the energies of spirit. The Imicea lived entirely on the piezoelectric currents created by pressures within crystal and rock in the earth, and thus they could be found attached to rocks and often inside cracks within stones. They often grew inside crystals as they were forming. The Imicea were especially fond of crystals. They responded to any piezoelectric currents running through the crystal by discharging light from their hair-like tendril forms. Sealed in transparent crystal, the Imicea resembled golden fern-like angel hair that came to life, firing illumined charges through the crystal when the high-level sentient minds of the Grail priest kings and priest queens interacted with the crystal the Imicea was embedded within. The high-level thought energies of these kings, queens triggered the same response as the piezoelectric currents of the earth within the Imicea. Although an impressive sight, there was much greater purpose for the Grail-born having created their Mobad form from quartz crystal containing this miracle plant. When the wispy tendrils trapped in the crystal table lit up, they also opened an etheric channel in their immediate proximity, which cleared away all astral density and thus lesser astral forms, thereby providing a stronger threshold for the attunement to the higher levels of the other world. Upon the surface of the Mobad were carved 12 sacred symbols representing the 12 thresholds of the Mazaroth. the command thresholds of the zodiac within the 13th Mazalothic portal beyond the Mazarothic zodiac, represented by a symbol in the center of the table. These inscriptions were inlaid with gemstones. In their otherworld work, these Grail kings, queens, entered various channels of light pathing attuned to one or more of the Mazarothic thresholds. The Mobad was programmed to accommodate them in this passage. The Starhonic housing, the Mobad of the Grail-born, was situated. The Starhonic housing of the Mobad of the Grail-born was situated on the Atlantean Isle of Ruta, in a small alpine village nestled between three mountain peaks, Umar, Talachet, and Moria. These three peaks were called the children of Zor, Z-H-O-R, Zor. Zor was the eagle god, or more aptly, according to the belief of the Atlanteans, the Divi, or nature power of high places. Ruta was the portion of Atlantis that did not succumb to the sea in the final deluge, which swept the rest of the continent asunder. Instead, Ruta, like Brigadoon, ascended into another electromagnetic zone of the earth, where it remains to this day. Although the Grail priest kings and priest queens had already departed Atlantis by the time of Ruta's ascension, one of the guardians of the Sarhonic remained. Removed from the effect of time as we understand it, this guardian is still in attendance in the Dragon Star. His name is Chesed, C-H-E-S-E-D, also known as the Eternal Watcher. It was he whom Hestor, Merlin's father, visited in his otherworld journeys. This being also became the guide of both Merlin and Arthur. Thus the Grail families and legends were underway long before King Arthur and his round table of Grail knights. Much of those legends, however, found their roots in the tales of these early Grail priest kings and priest queens, as is witnessed by the round table itself. As we will see, these Grail lineages continued on in a somewhat altered form after the demise of Atlantis. In the remaining age of that great civilization, another migration began, which allowed the Grail blood lineages to be perpetuated on Earth elsewhere. And now there's given here a meditative procedure with the Mobad crystal round. Visualize yourself standing inside the Sarhonic before the Mobad round table. Begin to circle it in a clockwise direction, as seen from above. As you do, notice that the surface of the crystal round... Apologies, I thought I had everything turned off. I'm going to start the meditation again. I can't edit these because they're just too long, and it's not possible for me at this time in my life to take the longer ones and edit them and re-render them and everything. So you're going to have to go with the flow with me on this. I'm going to start over on the meditation. Visualize yourself standing inside the Sarhonic before the Mobad crystal round. Begin to circle it in a clockwise direction as seen from above. As you do, notice that the surface of the crystal round is etched with lines and symbols denoting the divisions of the 12 sacred Mazarothic thresholds of the zodiac, like an astrological wheel. As you move into the zone of each threshold in your journey around the Mobad, ask to be given a sign that will allow you to integrate the sacred consciousness of that particular threshold into your being. As you are moving around the Mobad, the fine filaments of the Imisia, embedded within its exquisite quartz, are emanating a soft glow. The net result being an ever-expanding auric presence as you move further around the Mobad, coming into attunement with its sacred purpose. Once all the way around, allow yourself to sink into a deep free flow experience. Now, I'm just reading this to you, so you really, I know, can't get into a meditative state with it. But I wanted to give you the concept, the idea of how you might work with this, following your own accord, your own presence, working with the crystal table. Because remember, according to Thoth anyway, it's on the ascended Isle of Ruta. And it's still there, it's still present for you. The Watcher is holding it open for us to receive and work with it through our Grail genetics. And when we do so, we are quickening the genetics in everyone to become more Grail-oriented rather than anti-Grail-oriented. And that includes the ones who are the real doers of the anti-Grail. You know, they're human beings. They have souls and divinity. And so we're acting on all of these divine portals when we're working in this particular format. Of course, there are many other ways we can do this, but this is one that's given here in the context of the Sarhanic. And so, everyone, I'm going to conclude today with part 5 of our Grail round. And I do apologize for the little things going on, but I'm hopeful that the content and the delivery in general will make up for that, and you will receive from this what is my intention to give you today.